say this all every single week. Nonprofits change our world every day. Nonprofits are the organizations that make the greatest impact. And I am your boy, the nonprofit sector connector, Tommy D, coming at you as I do every Friday morning, just below the roof of my house in my attic. The show is called Philanthropy and Focus. I'm called Tommy D. I've been called Tommy D since I'm like 2 years old, to be honest with you. And I've been saying like, hey man, I'm your boy Tommy D. And my buddy Mick Collins, he's always like, yo, you're my boy Tommy D. But like as my hair falls out, as I get old, as I'm walking around with a cane one day, I'm still going to be your boy Tommy D. And this show will still be around. And this show is called Philanthropy and Focus. And the show is all about doing a couple of things. It's meeting with nonprofit leaders. It's helping them tell their story. Not that they necessarily need help, but it's my platform, it's my connections, and helping amplify their message. That's what I'm talking about, because I believe that if it wasn't for nonprofits, much of the work we talk about on this program doesn't get done. If it wasn't for the leaders of nonprofit organizations, this work doesn't get done. And the people who need the work and services done by the sector, it just doesn't happen. It's not, the work isn't complete. So last week, my buddy, my friend Maheen Kaleem was here from Grant Makers for Girls of Color. After that, I'm connecting her with my friend Renee Daniel Flagler of Girls Inc. of Long Island. I mean, this is the stuff that happens in real time. These are the connections. I will tell you this, I have a bunch of ideas for all new programming, a whole bunch of shows that I want to do. One specific show is going to be about the subject matter experts, the thought leadership for the sector. You know, whereas on this show, we spotlight the work being done by the sector, it's a different version of that. It's going to be really dedicated to getting the work out that solution providers, that thought leaders, that subject matter experts are providing to the sector. More to come on that. I'll tell you all about it. Trust me, because I just keep talking, Bobbie Brown. I just keep talking and talking. So everybody will hear all about it. I'm talking to, I want to call you a friend, Bobbie, but I know you don't even know me that well yet, but newest executive director of Young New Yorkers, Bobbie Brown is here. I'm going to read some of Bobbie's background. She's an educator, socio-political activist, and a visual artist. When we talk about what this organization is doing, what Young New Yorkers has done and is doing, it's going to make a lot of sense that they have found what I would say is the ideal match for what their organization is doing, Bobbie, and what you have done and are doing in your own career and from your own background. So first of all, I'd like to ask you a couple things. How are you today? And I'd like to say welcome to my show and welcome to my attic. How you doing? What's going on?
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me, Tommy. Thanks for having Y&Y on the show. I'm doing pretty good. Nice attic, by the way.
The power move is you all only get to see what I want you to see here in the attic, because if you see what my wife tells me is a mess, people wouldn't think the attic is as nice as it is. But thank you for your compliments. I appreciate
no
it.
Problem.
Thank you for being here. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thanks for having us. I really appreciate giving the spotlight and that you continue to give spotlight to small CBOs and nonprofits of alike. It's really imperative that continues to happen. So I appreciate that very much so. And I'm doing well. It's Friday, so can't really complain. The sun is shining. Smelled like crap outside. So,
it's New York, baby. That's it, right?
It's ridiculous.
That's a whole nother show, a whole nother conversation. But I just like, on a beautiful, like I live out here in the country, out in Long Island, I call it the country, but I just, that's the tough part about being in the city, man. Like, why does it have to? That's a whole nother show. That's another show. We got to talk to the mayor. I got to get the mayor on this show one day. We'll talk about it. But I'm taken by this organization. I'm taken by the work the organization has done and is doing. We'll get into that, but really for me, I'm always inspired to hear the story of the person. I don't know if you remember, there was a show called Biography on A&E, and it was like A&E was, I don't even know, arts and entertainment. I don't know what A&E stood for, but it was one of these like secondary or tertiary TV networks, right? That and they had this show Biography, and I loved it. Now I don't necessarily love reading biographies because I like to be told the story more than I like to read the whole book. But that was always cool for me. So can we start with your biography? Can we start with like your background, the work you've done? I always like to find out what drew somebody to the service work, to the service sector, to nonprofit. I mean, you're an attorney. You told me that you always knew you wanted to be an attorney. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully I will be licensed this fall. So I'm not quite an attorney, I don't get in trouble. Yeah, so like we were talking about before, I am from California. I'm all the way through California girl. And I really started getting into working in my community probably around 11 or 12 years old. I had joined an organization called Project New Village, which was a small nonprofit based in San Diego, Southeast San Diego, where I'm from specifically, that focused on reducing teen pregnancy rates. During that time, we had a high rate of teen pregnancy. I don't know if you remember at the time, like it was across the country, exploding, teens were getting pregnant. So in Southeast San Diego, we had a very high percentage of that. And so I would go there after school and just participate in activities and kind of try to get involved with messaging and literature. And one day they had a program on how to test for lead paint poisoning. And, homes, particularly homes in urban areas before lead paint poisoning was banned in 1978, I believe, out in California, a lot of homes were painted with lead paint, right? And so you already know that there were health symptoms that kind of manifested out of that and particularly impacted Black communities because it went untested. So with that, I was like 12 years old, sitting in workshops, learning how to inform my community, my neighbors, on how to test their homes on paint. And
so this 12-year-old young lady comes up and is like, let me teach you how to test your paint, like in your house, to see if you got lead paint. See, look, Let me interrupt the story for 1 second. I'm going to stare into the camera right now for you all who are paying attention to me. You can change the world. You can make an impact at 12, at 22, at 92. But I have a 12-year-old girl who lives in my house. And we might have to have a discussion later on about lead paint and things like that. Not that she needs to be concerned about lead paint in 2022, but it's the idea of the lead paint. It's the idea of a young person finding that initiative and finding that calling to do the work, to be involved, right? That's what so like, that inspires me. Like, that's not just some throwaway conversation. Like, that's really, you got involved. I want to hear more about it, but I just wanted to say words at the same time. So
no problem at all. And so that's what I did. I went with a group. So it was also stipend based. I got paid, so that was also great. Programs that pay students, it always helps, right? And so just learned how to do that. Went around to different neighbors, gave them literature, and then also would test their paint and show them their levels, and then also the harms that are associated with that. So I started working around that, like I said, around 12 years old, and then just kind of manifested into other work. I started going to city council meetings when my parents relocated to the suburbs. And that's when I learned then, because I went from living in a predominantly Black and Latino community in San Diego to moving to Temecula Valley, where it was pretty much 90% plus white, middle to upper middle class. And so that experience was different. I was in high school with 4,300 students, and less than, I think, 10% of us were Black or of color at all. And so with that, I started going to city council meetings to understand what was going on in my community. And that's what I learned very fast, that the constituencies who put those folks in office, that's who they're going to ride for. And that kind of laid my basis for how I kind of dealt with everything, and then started to understand who I was as a Black woman. That really started kind of peel that back. And that's when I went off to HBCU. So that kind of laid the foundation again, going historically Black college, which was very small, out in Charlotte, North Carolina, John C. Smith University. I think that really gave me some insight on what does it mean to be Black in America, to be a woman of America, identity, and all the different tribulations that you kind of have to unpack to get to where you need to. So I'll stop there because I can go on.
I'll tell you, I don't want you to stop there. I want you to go on, because this is the story, and for those of you who are not watching on video and are just listening to me, I will tell you this: I'm a white man. And I'm 44 years old, and I grew up on Long Island. What I'm not real clear, in fact, I was just in a meeting the other night with with a group. I'm not clear what class I am, and there's an exploration that I might be. I mean, I thought I was middle class, Bobbie, like my whole life, but I don't know. Like I remember like times in our lives where I would say, like I go back, I say, Mom, remember when we were poor? And she goes, we weren't really ever poor, but I always feel like there was a lot of times when we were younger where we were overextended, might be a better way to say it. You know, like both my parents worked. My mom at times worked a couple jobs. So I say it as like an exploration of us as individuals, but us as a community, you know, the larger, the greater community. And, you know, I studied at the Institute for Nonprofit Practice over the last year. I met many people in the nonprofit sector. Just to put it out there, I was one of the few white men who were involved in the work we were doing, and I'm there and was there and will continue to be there because I want to learn. I think that's what we're supposed to be doing, is learning from each other. But I mentioned this thing about class because I'll just put it out there. There's a friend of mine is very involved in an organization. It's a grant making organization. It's not me, who I mentioned already on the show. It's another friend and colleague of ours, and they have this cohort giving program that's coming up that'll be started in October. And I almost don't want to talk too much about it because I'm going to fill out an application, and it'll be funny. I'll have egg on my face if I don't get picked after I do the application, but I just put it out there to the world. So there it is. So, but it's not only a giving project, it's an opportunity to learn about, you know, about class, about race, about these different things. Whereas, you know, as somebody who really, as I say, I'm passionate. I want to support the sector in whatever ways that I can. I got a lot to learn, and it's a lot to learn about giving. It's a lot to learn about development. When I say development, I mean raising funds for nonprofit organizations. I think that I have a lot to impact the sector with, but I'm still trying to figure out what that is and what I have that the sector might need. So to me, when you talk about these different things, it's like, I've said this for a long time. I only know the path I've ever been on. I only know the path of a guy growing up on Long Island, you know, public school and then private high school and things like that. So my exploration is to find out and see other people and understand other people. So the stories you're sharing, for, you know, it's your story, but I want to hear it and the people want to hear it. So when we come back, I want to keep going through that because that's what I think, as my opinion, it's like, as a society, it's this evolution of where we're going to go is when we can relate to each other better. If you want to comment on that real quick before we go to break, because I said a lot. So.
No, I love it. I welcome it. I'll keep talking.
Very good. That's awesome. All right, well, guess what we're going to do when we come back? We're going to keep talking. It's Tommy D. This is Philanthropy and Focus. Bobbie Brown is here from YNY, Young New Yorkers. We're going to stick with her story, and then we will be learning about the organization and the incredible impact they make for people who have made some mistakes. And I told you in a video earlier this week, I've made a whole bunch of mistakes, but it's about making mistakes, and it's how do we help people you know, get out of those mistakes, because it could be really life-changing. So we'll be right back. Philanthropy and Focus.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
Oh man, I tell you, I get a kick out of that song only every time I hear it, every time I sing it, every time my younger son walks around the house and remixes the lyrics of the song to give me a hard time. He's 7, whatever he can do to break his dad's chops, I guess, is what it do. So, but look, join me in the attic every week. I just want to read some background. So, Bachelor of Arts, high honors, graduated cum laude from Johnson C. Smith University with focus in history, minor pre-law. St. John's University, home of the Johnnies, right? St. John used to be the Red Men, then the Red Storm. We've changed the name, right? Over years. Then MBA from Metropolitan College of New York, Juris Doctorate from CUNY, the City University of New York School of Law. 10 years of experience in community development in the areas of criminal justice and education, including her recent role as assistant corporation counsel for the New York Law Department. Bobbie, an incredible background. Take us on the journey. Let's go a little more into it. I wanted to give some people, but the newest executive director of Young New Yorkers, Bobbie Brown, take it away.
Some background more from that. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what happened. I went to all those places, but the reason why is because I wanted to work in international human rights law. That was the focus, trying to understand how to kind of like maneuver around the issues of just civility during the time period, and that's why I moved to Italy and went to school to do that work. And during that time period, even during college, I got involved with the Black Panther parties and some of the more grassroots organizations that exist at the time. Gen 6 was happening when I was in college and kind of help organize like responses around that. So there's just like constant iterations and reminders of the type of work that I need to be doing along my way that kind of brought me back to the United States and started working at the Harlem Children's Zone. But even before then, I actually started doing some work with the African Development Corporation, or ADP, as it's actually known, that works with the CUNY Graduate Research Center. And we started working on trying to build a school and a library out in the Kenya region. And so I became their education director there, more of a volunteer position. But like, again, just kind of throughout my life, I started seeing patterns and trends that really pointed me to continue doing some social service work in our communities. When I went over to the Harlem Children's Zone, I think that was the position that propelled me a little bit more deeper because it was in Harlem. And Harlem has a very unique and beautiful spirit to it. As it combats gentrification, it still really fights to maintain the sense of the Blackness and the spirit that exists in Harlem, right? It's very few sectors throughout all 5 boroughs that still has that. And so it's a lot of respect that they're fighting to maintain that. And I wish a lot of us had the opportunity to do that, to preserve our communities. But nevertheless, working in Harlem Children's Zone really kind of brought me open that it's not just my connectivity to my community is not just because I'm Black. My connectivity to my community needs to be my willingness to understand the individual experiences that we all go through, right? There is a tendency for folks to think just because we're Black, we all have this very, 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 very common shared experience and we should all connect. but there's a uniquity even within our day-to-day experiences that separate us. You know, you started talking about class before we went to break, and that's a conversation that we continue to pack amongst Blackness. You know, even amongst in the sector, you know, we were talking about having to get some education and do a learning. Even folks who are quote unquote leading the conversation in the sector do not come from the communities in which they're guiding, right? So there's a lot of learning that has to be done across the board, but certain folks are allowed to kind of have that mic. So I think I've been more intentional with choosing spaces and opportunities that allow me to do direct service work and understand what are the policies and the systems that are in place that that even puts me in the position to continue to have a conversation about poverty, about incarceration rates, about the social economic factors in Black communities, about educate. Like, we've been having these conversations for generations. My parents did, their parents did. Like, it's exhausting, right? Like, and so that's why I've continued that work, because not that I want to have us using diversion as a default on misdemeanor felony cases across New York City. Of course, we can dive into what that should and could look like, but it's also because we have to get to the point where we stop having conversations about all of these issues and how it relates to Black communities at some point, because it's traumatizing for us. So let's start fixing the issues and stop finding a need for CBOs like Y&Y to have to exist. And so that's how I kind of got into work that I did, just to give you insight of my mind.
I love that. Thank you. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate you being just so real, because that's what this is about. My show, it's about just getting real. Let's having this serious conversation. I want to ask you, because you talk a lot about, you talk about the willingness to understand the community needs and things like that. And I want to ask you this question about, so my friend Maheen Kaleem was on the show last week, Grant Makers for Girls of Color, and look, I don't need to say what a special organization it is, but it's a special organization. And what I find is, aside from the fact that they're putting money in the hands of those who do get such less, I mean, the statistic was like 0.5% of all dollars that are raised philanthropically go to girls and women of color, organizations that support girls and women of color. But what was, I don't want to say eye-opening because I was aware of it, but their focus is to let the communities know what they need. So it's an empowerment of the community, or rather giving the dollars and the resources to the community so they can go do what they need. I'd love to hear like a little bit about that perspective from you as well.
I agree. The community, before we became this over-incarcerated country, Black and Brown communities have been organizing and defining what public safety meant for themselves in the first place. Hence why you got the Black Panther Party in the first place, right? It wasn't just a response to the removal of, or the changes that happened after the Vietnam War, but it was also because we saw the gap. And so we fill those in with social service needs, right? That's how you got the early morning breakfast clubs, right? That's how you got those services in place. And so it's not abnormal for us to return back to that, particularly when our systems that we've elected to put in place are not fulfilling their duties. So since that social contract got broken, it makes sense that we do that type of work, and super supportive of it. And also because the communities have the credibility, we have the insight, and we have the connections to the individuals that we know may either be drivers of crime, may be the ones who need that early prevention, early intervention, the ones who need certain type of attention, because sometimes too many times organizations who start off with this idea of trying to shape or define public safety for the communities or how they should respond start off very well, but the issue is that they don't create sustainable processes within that community for them to stay dependent. Stay independent. They make them dependent on the same organization that got them going in the first place. So I love the idea of making that a continuous practice amongst diversion. We should continue to have that conversation, and we should also find more ways to not just fund the communities doing that, but giving them frameworks, giving them models, giving them more access to resources and services, and giving them the credibility they need so we can see those type of models across the country.
100% trust-based philanthropy, right? Putting the dollars where the people know how to use the dollars. There's so much history there. When I talk with me, again, back to because it's fresh in mind, but I think it's relative to our conversation. it's about back to the philanthropic roots and what, love of people. And that's sort of, where this sector of philanthropy, I did a video last week and it was just like, love of people. That's from the original Greek, and that's what that word meant. But that word doesn't mean that in a lot of circles, and in the connotation of philanthropy, and it's not, or the connotation is that it's wealthy people who can write checks who may not really understand what the needs are, and then but also at the same time want to declare how the dollars are being spent when they don't know what's needed in the communities, right? So it's kind of we could do 10 hours on that subject matter, and that's actually what I'm going to be. This other show that I want to do will be conversations around that and around like explaining to corporates. I mean, the program here is about Philanthropy and Focus as it stands now is about the leader and it's about the organization. But these concepts and ideas that, Bobbie, that you and I are talking about, need to be discussed, need to be out there. And I see a whole nother series of me having discussions about specific subject matter and topics, not because I got the answers, because most of the time I don't have the answers, but I have the friends and I have the connections with the resources and the people who do have these answers and can really start those conversations. So I want to just kind of, I have not read the book yet, but I've watched some videos of Michelle Alexander with, the book, The New Jim Crow. Look, it wasn't planned. I didn't tell you I was going to bring it up. It's just where the conversation started to go just now that it came up for me. So I pulled up some stuff. I've told you in the past that when we spoke earlier that Avenues for Justice, Angel Rodriguez is a friend of mine down the Lower East Side, and what that organization has done over the last almost 50 years. I don't think it's probably the people listening to my show. Well, maybe it is a surprise. The way that the criminal justice system is managed in this country it's systematically set up it's set up incorrectly. I mean, people are getting scooped up and getting their lives taken away from them for things that sometimes it's out of the communities that they're in. Sometimes it's just because it's where they are. And then their lives are changed. And I'm setting this all up a little bit. And Bobbie, when we come back, we could discuss this to whatever level you want, but I really just want to go to the point as well, where young New Yorkers, what the programs of young New Yorkers are doing. And, I'm just going to say this, the system is what it is there, and it's wrong and it needs to be fixed. But at the same time, there's things we need to do to help these young people while we're in things the way they are. I'm going to go long on this break. Do you have a comment on that real quick before we go to a break, and then we can talk about young New Yorkers when we come back?
Oh, no, I agree. It's hard to separate, the themes and topics that I brought up and then not talk about diversion because they're so interrelated. They have to, they serve as a foundation for why a young person gets involved in the criminal justice system in the first place. So no, I'm looking forward to having that conversation.
All right, we'll do that when we come back. Thanks, Bobbie. This is so awesome. I appreciate you being here. We'll be right back. Philanthropy and Focus.
Howdy, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who will expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauvert, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
All right, we're back. Join me in the attic. No time for silly jokes right now, Tommy D. Let's get moving. So, the way we met, Bobbie, the way we were connected was through the New York City Imagine Awards. Shout out to Ken Serini and Associates and the committee for the Imagine Awards. But we met that way because David Ravel, who was the interim executive director of your organization, and I had a meeting to discuss when an organization makes it to the semifinals of the Imagine Awards. We meet with them. We do one-on-one interviews, and I met with David. And one of the things that David shared with me was this national inventory on collateral consequences of conviction. And I did a video about it earlier this week, and it was just really promoting that you were going to be on the show. And I thought it was being cute. Like, I started out the video like, have you ever made a mistake? Have you ever made dumb mistakes, in your youth? And I know I have, and things to that effect. So when you talk about diversion, we talk about this organization founded in 2012. Young New Yorkers is a restorative art diversion program that allows young people to exit the criminal legal system, have their cases dismissed, sealed, and avoid a lifelong criminal record. So where do you want to start as far as that goes? We know that people get in a spot. We know that people get jammed up. Bad decision, bad mistake. I'm raising 4 people right now that I'm trying to figure out how to tell them how critical a mistake can be and how it can stick with you. And, let's just start with some of the folks that the organization has worked with and some of the things you've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start with a quote from one of our participants. When he said this, it was just so resonating. And I started with him saying, it was a question about what are your responses to raising the age, right? Do you think that raise the age should have taken place? Why do you think it happened? And his response is, 17 and 18-year-olds, the difference between right and wrong on a very basic level. He's like, however, if we were all playing on the same playing field, then you can justify the culpability. But he said, but since we're not, you're dealing with rules that are not meant for us. And I think that's a very clear reality about where our young people look at some of the decisions that they're making, right? They're not disconnected from the reality of understanding that the criminal justice system and the system in which they live in is vastly different of an interaction than their white counterparts, right? And because of that, I think that lays a foundation for how they look at the world, for how they make a decision to do quote unquote criminal type of conduct when sometimes it's a quality of life crime. It's a crime that's being done because I need to survive. But there's not a lot of room for folks coming from those certain communities to make those type of decisions on top of the extenuated circumstances they led them to that. So the diversion work of why and why is necessary because the young folks who come to us, they're coming from various places of trauma in their lives. They're coming from various places of decision making. Some may not even have the model or the framework for how to make positive, healthy decision making. But there's a presumption of maturity when you look at Black and brown people, right? So that's a whole nother conversation about that. But so with that, the work that they come when they come to Y&Y, these are young folks who have been charged with a low-level misdemeanor. They received a DAT, which is disappearance ticket, which is processed very similar to a regular arrest, with the exception that they come into the criminal court system, they get arraigned. That's the first time they're seeing a judge. They're getting presented with their charges, and then afterwards, if they're in a position to have counsel, which is another issue, right? Because they may not. If they're positioned to have counsel, then the counsel in the prosecutor's office can start talking about a solution for that case, right? And in most situations with Project Reset, which is more of a citywide initiative that was launched, I believe, in 2016 across the board, Project Reset allows young folks, particularly that between those ages up to age of 25, to get a dismissal on their case if they successfully complete a Project Reset course. So that's what we offer to young folks. Their case would be dismissed, sealed, and there's no record. They don't have to explain themselves. There's nothing to follow them, and then they can move on. And so our programs give them the opportunity to kind of restart, not from the point of the crime, but the point from the decision making, right? How did you even get to the place of getting arrested?
So, all right, so much here, and we could do this show for 5 hours. So it's not from the crime, but how did you get to that decision-making process? So it's really addressing, this word is so overused in this society, but I'm going to say a holistic view of what's going on in this individual's life, not just saying, well, you made this mistake. It's going back and supporting this person in different ways, right? And I know, just a shout out again to Angel and the team over at Avenues for Justice, Gamal and the crew down there, because they've been on my program. They've talked to me in the past about where the dollars that they may receive from the city to do the program would give like a window of 6 months to support one of their individuals. But that ain't it, man. That ain't enough. We're talking about, family life situations. Is the young person going to school? Is that even on their radar, right? And addressing all this peripheral stuff around that incident of the arrest and now what's going on, right? So there's so much more there to be discussed and to be involved with. And so I remember when I had to do I had this opportunity to do the write-up for the semifinalists for Young New Yorkers for the Imagine Awards. And I learned a lot about the graduates of the program who come back and are involved in support and are ambassadors in some regard for Young New Yorkers in the work that's going on. So I want you said something, and I want to just cover it real quick so people, if you could speak a little bit to raise the age, because I don't know if that's like something that everybody's aware of, but I mean, I'll just read what I have off the internet. Raise the age of legislation provides certain individuals previously convicted of a crime with the opportunity to have their criminal record sealed. If the individual remains crime-free for 10 years, they can apply to have that record sealed. Do you want to expand on that anymore for some people who might not be aware of that legislation?
Yeah, raise the age, basically legislation that was introduced in New York, I believe in 2017, where the idea was to raise the age of criminal responsibility to 18. I think New York had been one of 2 states that was still trying 16, 17-year-olds as adults. So that was just ridiculous. And so it was done in a very scaffolded approach. We went from 16 to 17 and 17 to 18. And so now what we've done is that we removed cases that are either not heinous, out of criminal court, and they're being tried either in the youth part of court or they're being tried in family court. So it's a necessary process, very old because it took New York so long, but I'm glad we did it. It's a necessary process to look at youth, because these youth are predominantly Black and Latinos, to look at Black and Latino youth as actual young people, because the mentality science was showing that the brain, particularly the frontal lobe, has not been fully developed yet to really hold culpability and accountability for young folks who commit certain crimes. So that's why raise the age was so important, for us to give recognition to the mindset of a young person when they're making these decisions. So.
Yeah, I thank you for that. So talk to me about the experience of a young person who comes to this restorative arts diversion program with Young New Yorkers. Give me the feel. What's that, the welcome, if that's the right word, or the interaction initially, and where that all happens, how that all happens.
Well, before COVID, which is almost like we have to start sometimes, before COVID, we were in person. Right. Yeah. So in-person programming, and of course, this is hearsay for me, but in-person programming consisted of a group of young people who would come in, and they would start by unpacking what does it mean to be here, right? How did we get here? What was the purpose of you joining here today, and what choice did you meet that brought you to Young New Yorkers? It always starts with the icebreakers because it's necessary for us to kind of like just lay that foundation because you're being vulnerable. So we want to create a safe space that you can talk amongst other folks who are in similar situations and have that conversations well facilitated by someone who's also well-trained, therapist, connected, person of color who gets it. And so even in that, they come into a space that looks like them, but feels different, right? For one, we are located in the YWCA building here in Boerum Hill. So working in a space that also is providing supportive housing to women in different points of transition, I think also kind of adds to the feeling when they come into a building like ours, right? They're not having to check in with security. They're not having to be pat down. They come in, they're open, they're said hello to, and they go on about their business. I think that even in itself, how you set the space up is welcoming. And then they're engaging into programming where they're really just almost like a therapeutic session when they're unpacking their choice and decision making. They're talking about some of the legislative and legal issues, like I mentioned, raise the age, understanding what diversion means, understanding their rights, right? Knowing when they are supposed to request an attorney, when they're supposed to speak. We do that because young folks need to understand how to protect themselves in their spaces. Because once they're done with us, it doesn't mean that they're not going to run to the police officers again. It's how they now navigate that situation, which is imperative. So it's creating a safe space, a bumper for them. Then we move into also continue their education about the legal system itself, giving them the right language, giving them the right phrasing, giving them the right tools so they can either also pass it on to their friends, right? Because you know that they'll do that, but also so they feel more comfortable because we're not going to always be there. And then 3, we move into a more a therapeutic approach where now we're getting into the nitty gritty. Tell us what happened. Tell us about the situation. And you could see the young folks really start to kind of like, how much can I give here, right?
Yeah.
And
How open can I be? Can I trust folks?
Right.
Is that what you just explained? Is that over several meetings? Does that all sort of happen in that first day when they're?
It's a 1 day. It's a 1 day program.
Okay, wow. So that's a lot to really go through. Yeah.
Yeah, you jump into for the 1 day. We have 1, 2, 3 day programs. Like you said, they're called RAD. And they're usually about 2 to 2.5 hours. They can be. And they're happening right now virtually, but we're returning to in-person programming soon. And so they'll be happening in a group context. But yeah, that all that explained is within those short-term programming that we have.
So I know I'm looking at my notes from the write-up, and this was the word I was looking for, the graduates program. So the graduates program has ongoing leadership, and I'm not plagiarizing. I wrote this, everybody. So the graduate program, the graduates get an ongoing leadership training, advocacy training, and the opportunities to testify in front of city council. So that type of opportunity now to not only have the change made for themselves, but to be part of the change, to testify in front of city council, to, as I understand it, and please, again, like you say, you know anecdotally because this is a new role for you, but also they had these students with the artwork that they've done, they would go and present in the courtrooms. So can you speak a little bit to that? I mean, COVID, well,
Yeah, so before then, what it is that they'll present, it's really a presentation of all of their art that they've created throughout their sessions. And so the idea is to go, it's almost like a reclaiming of the space that they started at, right? So they started the courtroom, now they're reclaiming the courtroom space and they're changing the way that you saw them from the first time. The first time you saw them as a defendant. Now, and with this certain perception, now through my art, through my rehabilitation, through my unpacking this, which still is an ongoing process, which all the community recognizes, the judges, the prosecutors, referring agency partners, community members are able to then come in there, and now the young person is representing themselves to that population as a new folk. That is what our courtroom public exhibitions allow for that interaction and kind of like a reintroduction of the young person to society for them.
But game changing. I mean, I can't say enough about it. So that's the first thing that comes to me. Completely different. They're a different individual now, right there. And now from my conversation with David, who was the interim director of the organization, he had shared with me that many of the the prosecutors, the court folks, the police officers, they are changed by this, not just changed by this one individual. I mean, so much so that, again, I'm looking at my notes, but for certain crimes, when the DAT or desk appearance ticket is given to the young person, the police man or woman on the street is talking about the RAD program for young New Yorkers, like making a referral, right? To say, like, this is a program you can go, to improve because they've seen the change in people. I don't know if you could speak to too much about that, but that's something that, I had learned through the conversation with David earlier. So.
Yeah, and that's the imperativeness of having those relationships, within, that's what community policing looks like. Being able to identify what resources exist to prevent the crime from percolating again.
Right, but isn't that the thing? Oh man, I'm cranky. But like, that's the whole thing. Like, let's fix the thing, right? Not just make it, a never-ending cycle. Let's teach. This is a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old child. Yeah. Why don't we try and impact the child and make them improve? So then them and their family, but then the society at large is better off. What are we doing here? I don't know, Bobbie. All right.
Well, what we're doing here, Tommy. It's systemic, right? It's also profitable and it's also systemic.
Well, of course, it's systemic and it's profitable. It's big business. The criminal justice. It's big business. I spoke over you. I'm sorry. Say that again.
No, I said absolutely. That's why programs like Y&Y should be fully funded by our city and our state government, right? We are supplementing for the cost of incarceration for you. We are literally leading the charge for what a new society should look like. We have to be able to reevaluate our society from all different points. And so if New York is in a position to truly be a model of using community-based alternatives as defaults for low-level crimes and particular felonies, then we need to show what that looks like. I mean, you have California who's taking no reins and being more progressive across the board. I mean, given their criminal justice system is very antiquated, but nevertheless, there's still opportunities here in New York.
Incredible. Yeah. And I like, the greatest part about this show for me is I get to meet new people and I get to find out great stories, but then I want to know how we can help and I want to know how we can support and how, through connections and whatnot. And I always like to do that in the final segment of the program, which is coming up right after this break. And it's, Bobbie, this is our second interaction in history of our relationship. When we come back, talk to me about the future of this organization, which I know is a new organization to you as far as being the leader of it. Where are we going? What's coming up? What events are there? How can we support? I mean, I've mentioned it. I'll just put it out there. Tom Gretsch and Brendan Levy over at the Queens Chamber of Commerce, we need to get you connected to this organization, and that just has to happen. So I'll make that happen, Bobbie, when and if you want me to. But this is the kind of stuff we need to do. So when we come back, I want to hear about the future, what you believe would be great partners to play with, like whether they be corporate, local corporates, whatever, or agencies or whatever. I just want to hear about that because my people that listen to this program and connect with me and are in my world, I want to get them to be involved. And that's that. Well, is that okay?
Love it. Thank you.
Let's do it. All right. We'll be right back. Philanthropy and Focus. Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
And we're back. This is the lightning round. Bobbie, you might not know this, but I always wanted to be a game show host. So this is the game show host part. This is the lightning round. All right. So talk to me. I cannot wait to get a whole nother show where we can just talk about all the things we've talked about in further depth. But right now, I want to bring it home about YNY, what's upcoming, can people find out more? Is there a gala? All of that for us, and who can we get you connected to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'll start off where you can find us. You should definitely follow us on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter. We're all at Young New York, Young New Yorkers. So you can find us there to connect. LinkedIn as well. And so that's that. As far as what's coming up, we are looking to have a gala in the spring. I'm looking forward to sharing that information once that's finalized. We'll be celebrating our 10th year anniversary, so that's going to be very exciting. We also will be having a fall campaign coming up in the next few months. So we'll be sharing that information on how people get involved and donate there. Also, what we're looking to do with YNY, we're in a really great position to grow and transition to a whole new phase. The world is our oyster, right? And so with that, we're looking to, one, make sure that we are expanding our direct services and really embedded them into artistic expression. And so with that, we would love to deepen our connection, particularly with the Brooklyn artistic community, right? Whether that's through foundations, councils, independent artists themselves. We'd love to bring them more into the fold, right? Be part of those conversations. And then also with like streetwear fashion, there's a lot of opportunities out there we want to build with. There's organizations who particularly fund the type of work that we're doing, like Arts for Justice, we would love to connect with. Some larger the corporations. I think I have a lot of ideas for what partnership can look like, especially for those who are looking to expand their corporate social responsibility arm and how that strengthens. Even for financial institutions who are thinking about ESG factors, right? And we fall into those social governance factors when you think about social impact investment. That's why and why. We were also looking to get a building space. You know, we are looking to be able to get a grant so we have a space that really is an artistry residency area for them. You know, we can really grow with something to call our own. And another thing that we are hoping to be able to do is increase brand awareness. Learning more about the work of diversion, the role of YNY, the role we play in our community as far as being a default for our misdemeanor cases, low levels, the work we're doing in Manhattan, the work we're going to be doing in Queens eventually. The more that we can expand and get people engaged through either connecting with us through our social medias or coming to our events and our exhibits. We will be returning to having public exhibits soon, so we're looking in the spring. So once that's out there, everything will always be on our social medias. But really, the more that we can educate our communities about the role of diversion, the role of really looking about defining some safety for yourselves, the more that we can have that connection and impact, I think that as a sector, we can get to the point where we may not be needed for that. We can start doing more preventative work. So.
Wow, I love it. I love all of that. It's so expansive, so much there. I wish you had an event coming up next week because I want to hang out with the. I sit on the board for an organization called the Spirit of Huntington Art Center, which is out here on Long Island. And much of the work they do is around the individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities, veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. And they have an artworks program, which is it's a program for young people who are aging out of services from a perspective of intellectual developmental disabilities. And it's an incredible program. And we have a family foundation in memory of my cousin Linda, the Lindy Lou Foundation, and all the money we raise goes to organizations in the special needs or IDD space. And and we bought, not me, the organization has purchased a number of Apple computers for the artworks program at the Spirit of Huntington, which apparently is that direction because I'm pointing there with my thumb. I don't know why I'm doing that. But it's just when I hear art, it always makes me think of that program. So at some point, maybe we can all collab and show you what we're doing. But the artworks program is teaching these individuals with different abilities how to graphic design work, digital artwork. They've in fact, I haven't shared this, but we own an employee benefits agency, Vanguard Insurance Agency. That's what I do professionally, but we're going through a rebrand right now. And who's doing our rebrand, mission, vision, value, the whole thing, but the Spirit of Huntington Art Center. So more to come on all that. I rarely ever promote on my business on this show, but that's what we do. So it sounds like that might be a cool hookup that we can get to know each other that way. And they have art on, we were out at the Hamptons Art Fair a couple of weeks ago because they have this special needs art fair that goes on the road. It's like a traveling art show. So we can, I think you would dig it. I think the organization would dig it. I think we could, there's something here we can collab on for sure. We'll have to check that out. Look, Bobbie, we're at time right now. I hope this was a good opportunity for you to really get out the message you want to. I want to find ways where we can have another show and talk about, these other topics, whether it's ways that the RAD program from YNY is addressing them, or just how we need to address things at a larger level. Like you said, once we solve one problem, there's more problems we need to address as, not only as organizations, but as a society. So anything you want to leave the crew with, the gang with, before we sign off here?
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having us. I'm glad that we were able to make this connection and that your audience was able to learn more about young New Yorkers, the folks who are leading the charge, the importance of the word. Stay connected with us, come to us some exhibits, follow us on our websites and our social medias. We'll post everything there, but continue the conversations, continue finding ways to stay connected in your community, learn more about why this type of, why diversion work is necessary. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with you, Tommy, and growing the relationship. This is going to be great.
So do I. Congrats on your new gig. Congrats on the new role. You're an incredible asset to them, and I imagine they're going to be an incredible asset to you as well, right? I mean, it's the work. It's about the work, as we keep saying, right? It's about doing it. So thanks again for being here, and make it a great day, everybody. We'll see you next week on the show.
All right. Thank you.